Guys, let's give Austin a minute. I think he's done. There we go. Let's give him a minute to get over there and get ready.
All right. You mind if I clip you? If you go anywhere.
That's why I've got two radios, right?
Waiting on one guy. You can tell us still got that on. Yeah. Throw the mic on. You want to give the mic to Brianna, Bryce. One of you guys mind holding
Hey, do you want to record on my REM so you can have this official update? Okay.
You good now?
Yep. This is JC, this cross country momentarily in a few seconds.
Everybody good?
We're good.
Good.
Commander, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience. My name is Megan Howard. I'm commander of the Houston Police Department's Tactical Operations Division. A little after 1 p.m. today, officers with Southwest Division Patrol received a call for service regarding a shooting in progress in the 4200 block of Naughty Oaks Trail. Officers arrived within just a couple of minutes. It was a chaotic scene. There was a lot of movement going on. Once they were able to get the scene semi under control, they found that there was a decedent, a male appears to be in his 20s, a black male, in the backyard of a vacant residence. And there was some information that another party involved in a disturbance had fled into a nearby residence. Preliminary information was that there was some sort of disturbance, somehow guns were involved, and then obviously at some point we have a male who was shot, and that is our decedent. Officers were able to pull some or get some adults from one residence to come out. They debriefed, gathered additional information, and again there was information leading them to believe that one of the parties, possibly still armed, was inside of this residence. At this point, they determined that it was a barricaded suspect. They contacted Homicide Division, attempted to get compliance and call anyone else out of the residence. At the time, there was a juvenile who was inside, although we weren't in fear for the juvenile's safety because it appeared that this male was related to occupants of the residence. He possibly has autism or has some other developmental issue. And so there was some concern about getting him to come out, not be afraid, have some compliance. So our first and most important aspect at that point was securing the crime scene and trying to get the 13-year-old out. We were able to do that. We were able to get him to come out. Homicide investigators, they began their investigation. Again, it's a very active scene. They have not had a chance to really walk the scene because it hadn't been safe for them to do so until just now. But they got their preliminary information, were able to interview witnesses and try to stitch together what they knew. They brought that information to the district attorney's office and were able to file a search warrant. Once they had all the details that they needed for the search warrant and it was fully reviewed, approved, signed off by a judge, we then had a search warrant in hand. And so we proceeded with serving the search warrant to check the residence for any evidence related to this incident. While running that search warrant, we did find a male inside believed to be one of the parties involved in this disturbance that then resulted in the death of the complainant. He is currently going to be interviewed by homicide detectives. They need to find out his side of the story to find out what exactly transpired today. So that's where we're at. We just got the scene to a status where it was safe for homicide investigators to check it, for CSU to begin processing the crime scene, and of course the medical examiner's office is going to have to come out to retrieve the body. So the investigation, even though we've been out here for many hours, the investigation is still actually in the very early stage, and it's going to take a little while for homicide to put all the pieces together and find out exactly what happened to determine what charges, if any, would be filed. At this time, all we know is that we have a deceased male. He's in his 20s. He's in the backyard of one of the residences. We have another male who will be interviewed downtown to get additional information, and the scene still needs to be processed. That's where we're at right now.
When you mentioned there was someone in the home that had autism, is that the person who was inside the adult, or was that the 13-year-old?
The child.
Okay.
What was the suspect, the barricaded suspect, doing when you finally found him?
I think he was just standing very still.
They never communicated back with you guys?
He never communicated. We made multiple attempts to try to make contact, both over a loudspeaker and through possible known phone numbers that we had. We never got a reply to any of our attempts to make contact. And we did that periodically throughout this entire standoff.
And you even had family members trying to do that too, right?
Right, so we did leverage family members and anyone who we thought might get through to them. We know that a lot of times we have people who are afraid, whether it's the circumstances that they're in or fear of the police or whatever it is. So we try to overcome those barriers, and sometimes family members are able to help us through that.
What time was it that y'all finally got that search warrant in hand?
So it was a little before 10 p.m. and then about 10:30 is when we actually placed them. Were able to pull them out of the residence.
What took that process so long?
So there's a number of steps of reviewing and approval and collaboration between investigators and the district attorney's office, and it just takes time. And when you have a chaotic scene like this and you're kind of handicapped by the fact that you can't really process the scene to find corroborating evidence, it just creates some challenges.
How long was that child in there before they eventually were released to come out?
So he came out, I want to say it was a few hours into it, between 4 and 5. I don't have an exact timestamp for you. One of the possibilities also was that it being a school winter break was that he was up late and possibly asleep. So that could have been one of the reasons that he didn't catch previous attempts to make contact with them.
There's been a lot of talk among neighbors that the barricaded suspect was maybe out on bond. Is there any information you can share about his status?
I don't have any details about that.
Was he armed when he was arrested?
So he was placed in custody. To my knowledge, he was not armed when SWAT officers placed him in custody, but we do have a search warrant, and it will take quite a while for CSU to process the scene and search for all evidence. Based on some of the preliminary information, there was reason to believe that a weapon from today's incident could be inside of the residence.
So you said it was chaotic. We know there was a homicide. What are the potential charges for all of this now?
So it remains to be seen. It really depends on what this person who's now going to go provide a statement, what he provides, and whether charges would be filed or if it would be referred to the grand jury. So can't really get ahead of ourselves because we don't know if this is a case of self-defense or a case of aggravated assault, a felony murder. There's just a wide spectrum, including the possibility that he's not charged. We just can't speak to that at this point, at this early juncture in the investigation.
And do you know if there was any relationship between the shooter and the victim, or the suspect and the victim?
No, not sure what the relationship could be.
Are you able to identify the deceased?
So we can't confirm that. The medical examiner's office is going to positively identify the body. We have a we have a preliminary idea of who it could be, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves when the medical examiner's office hasn't had a chance to get that positive identification using biometrics and to be positive about the deceased ID.
And what about a motive for the shooting?
That's still under investigation. It's very early.
Looking at all the people that were out here, several family members that were out here the duration, did that make it easier or more difficult for you guys to eventually go in there and get the job done?
You know, it's just one of those things that was. Thankfully, the family respected the crime scene tape, and they were able to assist somewhat. So it was neither good nor bad. It just was, and we worked with what we had, and we appreciate the assistance that we did get.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you all for your patience.
Thanks for your work. Appreciate it.
In an ideal world, yeah.
It's not turning off.
Hey, Victor, thank you.